Welcome to the Full Charge Power Hour. I'm Matt Fulcheron. I got my main man, Craig Coleman, here.
Yes.
And special guest, Gary Cannon.
Yeah.
In the
What the
house.
fuck is up, dude? How are you?
I always know that there's a problem with you getting a guest because I reached out to you 2 days ago. Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Good. You free in 2 days?
Right.
I was like, oh, this is something. Who
Yeah.
bailed?
And-
Somebody bailed.
And I always feel bad, like, when people are like, yo, we should hang out or whatever. I'm like, yeah, come do my because at this point in my life, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
Sure.
But I went through a phase where I'm like, I got to do what? I
Yeah.
got to go where? But listen, I figured I'd ask.
Sure.
That's
this is perfect.
That's another thing I'm doing now. Ask what I want. People don't want to do it. Then it's their responsibility to
Because
say no.
before, when you started comedy, you weren't that guy willing to ask. You were just kind of waiting for people to ask you, right?
It depends. It's
Yeah.
strategic. I don't just willy-nilly ask for something. I sit down and map out an email for like hours.
Yeah.
Make sure I ask perfectly for something. But if it's just something like this, yeah, I don't always want to put people out.
Yeah.
But then I realize people are just like me. They want to go do something too. I'd love that. Like, there's no production in Los
Right.
Angeles.
So
people
we-
want to go do shit right now.
Yeah, it's true.
So we were talking about this. I spent a lot of time in this studio at All Things Comedy with Aaron and a
Yeah.
bunch of the people here. Steve Byrne and I had a podcast
Yeah.
for a bunch of years called The Gentleman's Dojo.
Brilliant name.
And we had some big
Absolutely.
guests, Vince Vaughn. We had a lot of big name
Okay.
people on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we had probably 7 or 8 listeners throughout the entire run, not just per episode.
Well, we inherited those.
Yeah.
You guys
took
quit.
those?
Maybe
Yeah.
they folded
We got a
in.
bump.
But it's just, I spent so much time here, and I just remember walking back in this door, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is where we interviewed Ray Parker Jr. It's kind of cool.
That is really cool.
Wow.
Did you hear that?
I did hear that.
Who are you going to call?
We
Who are you
had-
going to ask?
I had the best strategy for booking guests. What I would do, if we wanted an author on, I would go directly to the publisher, find out who the publisher was, find out who their PR person was, and I would say, hey, I do this podcast. We have tons of listeners. By the way, they have very little time to verify it or want to.
Sure.
Check up on that
They
listener.
don't. They
Yeah.
don't care. They just
Yeah.
assume you're being legit. They would send me the book, right? Steve and I would look over the book, and then they would call in, having no idea that nobody was listening. This was just for us to get a free book,
Fantastic.
and for us to get this author
course.
on.
That's brilliant.
We had on the guy that killed Bin Laden,
Wow.
Wow.
The Navy SEAL guy?
Robert O'Neill. He was
Sure.
on the show.
Right.
We had on the guy, like who's the guy? The late night guy. His son is a comic too.
I'm not sure.
Runs the Manhattan Beach Show. But Bill Carter.
Okay.
And the crazy thing was they would send us the book thinking we're going to deep dive into this
Sure.
thing and start reading it and call out passages like you would and
Right.
have things highlighted. But we just
Right.
wanted the book.
Yeah.
And again,
Fair.
they have
To not read it.
They have no idea who they're calling into.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
little fan base we had.
Sure.
But it was just a way. I remember Robert O'Neill, the guy that killed Bin Laden. Like he said, "Hey, here's my cell phone number. If there's a I was like, "Excuse me."
Yeah.
Like literally,
Well,
had he
sure.
found out that we had that little, we would have been the next Bin Laden. For
I
us to be
wonder,
killed.
I mean, once he does all the right-wing circuit,
Yes.
who's calling him? You
But
know what I mean?
that's a nice number to have.
That's a great one to have.
Because if you're in trouble,
Hey,
Yes.
you can at very least call for advice. Like, he might,
$200.
Yeah, he
What's
might-
it take to get a guy out?
and yeah, he might want to come by and kick some ass.
There
if
was-
someone's breaking into your house.
One of our favorite episodes.
Fuck 911.
It wasn't a big guest, but years and years ago, I did a corporate gig in Las Vegas for a doctor, like a proctol. I don't remember what it was, but they were not nice. They were a
Yeah.
very tense. They kicked me off after about 11 minutes. Somebody threw a napkin at me. And I got the gig through
Man.
Gig Masters.
Can we slow down for a
Yeah.
second, though? Because some people might not know what you do.
Oh.
You get up there and fuck with people.
Correct.
Yeah, you get up there. You don't really insult them, but you make fun of them.
It's like
Yes.
your Facebook posts, right?
Yes.
This is my favorite. Happy birthday. Oh, look at you. Still alive. Like,
Yeah.
it's always this great Gary Cannon
And-
comment that makes me laugh every time.
And I want to come back to this, but you did warm up on Sullivan and Sons,
Correct.
right? Steve
Yes.
Byrne's sitcom.
Yes.
And you would trash the actors in between
Trash.
takes,
By the way,
like on a mic.
what other show?
Oh, my God. That's great.
You think the cast of Friends is letting the warm-up shit on the
Right.
there's just no way.
No.
Right.
I mean, I would literally. So that's how. So I do audience warm up for TV shows. And Steve Byrne, when he got his sitcom,
Yeah.
said, "I want Gary to do the warm up on my
Yeah.
show," which was
Yeah.
great because I hadn't done a sitcom.
Yeah.
And those are nicely paid gigs, and
Yeah.
they're also hard to get because there's not a lot of people that do
Sure.
them.
For
So you
sure.
said, why not risk being fired?
I would do it, and I knew Steve had my back because they didn't
Yeah.
want to hire me because I was inexperienced, but Steve had my back. So I would go there, and because those shows would take so long to film, I would just have to kill time, just start dumping on the cast and the
Oh my
crew.
God, that's too
And I
good.
remember like saying Steve Byrne, who's the star and executive producer, saying that he went to the Keanu Reeves School of Acting because it was and like and then I would say does TBS, do they have any comedies on their fall lineup? Just and any other
Yeah.
show would have booted you. They just wouldn't have put up with this.
Absolutely.
And I remember
That's so
just
great.
and Steve allowed it, and he was and then what would happen is the actors would then grab the mic to rip on me, and like the audience,
And they're no good at it, right?
they're no good, but the audience was on my side.
Of course.
And you also have to
Absolutely.
remember, and Steve and I have talked about this years later, the audience for that show was not Sullivan and Son fans. The
They're
show
just
was brand
people-
new. They're people
They just
primarily
invite in or
there
whatever.
raising money for a church group, a school group, a rehab center. I'm not joking. That's what it was.
And they're like, hey, you want to see a free show?
Do you want to see a free show? We'll pay each person in your group $12.
Oh, done.
I was interviewing a guy, and Roy Wood yells out, "Hey, man, what do you do for a living?" And the guy said, "I just got out of prison." I mean, honestly, that was what, because again, nobody knew that show.
Yeah.
It wasn't like Ellen or some of these other high-profile shows. Nobody knew it.
But you're also tapping into something when you said Roy Wood Jr. was on
Yes.
the mic. Every single person on that cast was a stand-up comic.
Oh,
Most
they
of them,
were?
yes.
And
The
so-
4 leads were,
Okay.
yes.
And so
Okay.
they could grab the mic and go to town on the audience too, right?
But it was interesting because when they would do it, when they would try to burn me, I had such a bond with that audience
Yeah.
that they almost started booing the cast.
It's like they're punching down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude.
Because the truth is, they're not really there. They are there to see the show, but they're kind of there to fundraise.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're there for the free sandwich that's
Sure.
going to come around in a couple
And
of
the 12
hours.
bucks.
Yeah.
They really, and the problem with those paid audiences is you'd have a lot of troublemakers within the group.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go to the liaison who was there to watch the group and say,
Hey.
if this group doesn't settle down,
They're not
we're
gonna-
kicking the whole group
Yeah.
out. So now they would look at the 3 people that were causing issues,
Yeah.
realizing if they got kicked out, there
Yeah.
was no money for them to eat later that
Yeah.
night.
Right.
Like they better
Right.
behave.
Yeah.
But you don't want to start kicking people out because then you're going to lose 50 people. You're going to lose all these
Right.
people. So
Yeah.
it was a very difficult challenge.
You're also there like a half an hour to an hour early with the audience. So when by the time
Yes.
the actors come on, they're like new, unfamiliar people.
So you've developed
Right.
this situation with them that they've liked you. Like
Yeah.
you're giving out free T-shirts. You're
Right.
the guy.
Yeah,
Yes.
just
You're
can't
one of
do that.
them. Yeah.
Yes, you're
yeah.
one of them.
Ahmed doesn't have a t-shirt gun.
But it was an interesting because you're filling 4, 5, 6 hours as they're reshooting, as they're rewriting. I mean,
Yeah.
it was
That's a lot,
a
dude.
long, long night.
Right.
That is a
And
lot
and
of
I think the
time.
problem that we faced, a lot of sitcoms just film at night from 6 to 10, whatever it is. We did a dress rehearsal during the day. So the dress rehearsal was supposed to be an hour. Then they would go to dinner. They'd do a few rewrites, bring in a real audience, and then we'd film the real show. Well, what was happening is during that dress rehearsal, they would hear the audience not laughing or not responding. And again, these are people that aren't really there for any particular reason
Yeah.
other than to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're basing a lot of that real show off of the reaction that these people are giving.
Yeah.
Which should really warrant any merit. Who cares what these people think?
Right.
Yeah.
Even if they
totally.
are laughing, it doesn't mean that it's going to be good or bad.
Right.
Let's just roll right into the real show. But they really would base that off of what was going on earlier. So now you're doing that dress rehearsal. Now you have dinner. Now they're rewriting. Now that second show is delayed because they're trying to figure out what will work, what
was
won't
it?
work.
Do you ever like trash the guys so bad and then you sit down for dinner and be like, so guys, how's it going? And they're like, fuck you, Gary.
Well, there was moments on the road, not necessarily with that show, but where Steve and I, and we talk about it to this day because we're close, but
Yeah.
where Steve and I would make fun of each other so much on the road.
Yeah.
Where I would just take it a little too far, and Steve would have enough.
Yeah.
And then I would get back from the road on Monday morning, and Steve would send me an email, and I always knew it was bad because there wasn't a subject line. It was just from Steve, a no subject line
Your
email
behavior, it
saying,
would say.
you just, it was a little too much and this
Yeah.
and that. And I always knew it was on those weekends where maybe we didn't sell tickets or there were a lot of issues. I just saw Steve a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about being at the Atlanta Punchline, or it was the Atlanta Improv. It was brand new. And there were curtains on both sides of the stage covering empty seats. And during the middle of Steve's show, I literally started going down and exposing the empty chairs. As Steve's on stage performing to 40, 50 people.
Yeah.
And he's pissed. I mean, I get it.
Sure.
Are you doing that to these other headliners
Yeah.
that are cutting you a check?
No.
Just not
The
happening.
answer is no.
Right. But, I mean, looking back on it, it was a lot of
Right.
fun. But, like, again, I will say this. Christine Ebersol, who was on Sullivan and Sons, Tony Award winner, amazing actress, amazing person. I remember one time I'm making fun of them, and Christine grabs the mic, and she said, I love this because it's true. And that kind of gave me a pass because she's kind of
Sure.
nonpartisan,
More
neutral.
prestigious,
Yes.
too.
And because she said this is funny because it's true.
Yeah.
I remember one time somebody said, an audience member said, when is the show going to air? I was like, guys, this is never going to see the light of day. and it was just making fun. Right. Steve did this great thing for me one time. He would have comics who were there on the show, showcasing or doing bit parts, come up into the audience and do stand-up while we were taking a long time to film, while we were breaking. Ryan Dalton, who's a comic, now used to live in L.A., now he lives in Ohio, came up and started doing stand-up. He's bombing.
Right.
Bombing. And I'm now making fun of him on the microphone for eating it.
While he's doing it?
Yes, commenting. He's there to help me. He is there to help me, give me a break.
He's helping you all right.
Yeah.
He gets off stage, and I am just, he goes back on the sound stage to start doing his acting.
Yeah.
And I'm just annihilating him. A guy that was there to help me. And I'm
Not
like,
only that, you're trashing his confidence. He's now got to do his acting,
Now
which
he's
he's
gotta
probably
do his
not used to
acting.
doing.
yes.
Right?
So
He's more
that
of a
was-
stand-up, probably.
So that was so funny, just having to, just having him up there in the audience to help me
Yeah.
kill time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just could have cared less.
Dude.
Oh, that's too
So
good.
so you didn't behave that way. You also did warm up for Conan O'Brien.
Yeah, but
that
you're-
must have been a different thing.
It's a different energy, but also you're only doing 15 minutes. So,
Oh.
yeah, you're doing 15 minutes, you bring out the band, and you head to your car.
Oh, my
I mean,
God.
That
Oh,
was
that's that.
night and day.
So you didn't always stay unless maybe you wanted to see
No.
the guest or something.
No,
Yeah.
no, because I remember Jimmy Pardo, who did it before me. I always heard that he would leave. And I was
Right.
like, that seems weird
Yeah.
that you can just leave as the show's filming. I'd feel very weird about that. What if there was an incident or something that they needed you for? There was never an incident. There
Yeah.
just wasn't.
Whereas Sullivan and Son, it's almost like you're some sort of director. You're almost in charge of the show in a way, keeping people's attention
Yeah.
for 6 hours or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, listen, that's why there's very few people that do sitcom warm-up as opposed to other warm-ups,
Gotcha.
game shows, talk shows,
Gotcha.
whatever that is. It's a very difficult skill
That's a
having to
job.
fill 6 hours. I mean, you don't know if these breaks between takes are going to be 5 minutes or half an hour.
Yeah.
Could be a lighting issue. They may want to rewrite that whole scene. Then the actors
Yeah.
don't know the lines.
Yeah.
So then they have to
Yeah.
memorize them. So, but again, listen, the money on these sitcoms is 5 times more than
Right.
it's going to pay for
sure.
a talk show, game show. But you're there a lot longer. And you also have to remember, these sitcoms only tape 22, 23 episodes a season.
Yeah.
So if that crowd stinks, right, they have 6 days to think about it before you come back and do another one.
Right.
So now the worst thing that can happen, not on Sullivan and Son because I knew those guys, but you do another sitcom, you get that call the next day and it's the line producer and you're like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
Because again, it's never the writing, it's never the acting that's bad, it's never the show, it's never the rehab group, it's the warm-up guy.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't do your job.
Did you get an email with no subject in it?
from other line producers? But you would get those. There's nothing worse than doing a show and you're 12, 14 minutes in, and you get a tug on your pant leg from somebody on the floor saying this crowd isn't good. And you're like, yeah, I'm completely aware of it. I'm closest to them.
You don't have to tell me.
I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, right.
And now you're like, okay, the script is bad. It's not good. How long is this going to take to film? And you know that this could be your last day.
Sure.
Because they'll just bring in somebody else.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's how I got the Dr. Ken show with Ken Jeong. They didn't like the previous guy.
Right.
But then it's also how you lose gigs. You're not a fit for that show.
Sure.
It's just not working.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason. I mean, there's a warm-up guy named Ron Pearson who does a ton of shows. I mean, this guy
He can juggle, right?
is a one-man show. He's balancing a ladder on his chin. He's juggling. He's
Yeah.
setting himself on fire. Like,
Yeah.
this guy knows where the long stop-downs are and just knows how to play that.
Right.
There's only so many times you can ask whose birthday it is, who's celebrating something, who wants to do a dance contest before they realize you are completely out of material.
The dance contest is the last stop before out of material, right?
Yes, the last. It really is. People know you're fading at that point. They just know
Right.
the jig is up.
Yeah.
How many
God,
birthdays? Where they know, and then they start to be like. The worst thing is when somebody is there with a group and they'll say, "Call my friend down. Call my friend Randy or
Sure.
whoever." It's the worst because you call him down and he is just not a good audience member that's willing to participate.
Right.
And then you have to figure out a way to send him back. But my buddy Roger, who does a ton of warm-up, said he was doing warm-up one time, and a kid who was from, like, the UCLA baseball team, they're raising money for the school, walks by and says, "I'm going to kill you, Baldy." Like, literally says that.
Yeah.
And Roger on microphone said, "Excuse me?"
Yeah.
And the guy said, "I didn't say anything." And he said to the audience members, like, "You know, I'm making $6,000 tonight, just so you know, and you're here raising $13 for your group." And he said he regretted it because he shouldn't have gotten that upset
That's
about
not very
it.
warm up either.
No, it's not very like. And let's go back to the scene. Remember, we were in the kitchen, and the couple was just arguing. So that's the thing. But
That's more of a simmer comedian.
it's so
cool down.
Listen, the sitcoms are great. They're coming back now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, the truth is, those late night shows for a comic
Yeah.
are the greatest gig.
Gotcha.
Because you can be fun and goofy and push the line a little bit, swear a little bit. Nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
You can be a little edgier.
Right.
Whereas daytime's different. You can't do that.
Oh yeah.
No,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So you really have to kind of protect the show in daytime. But with Conan or Ferguson or Kilt, like, you can kind of get away with a lot more.
I've seen the guys at Comics Unleashed really fucking earn their paychecks. Because that's like a 12-hour day.
That's a 12-hour day.
Wow.
And the people who do those shows don't really work anywhere else. I mean,
Gotcha.
I kind of know those people who
Gotcha.
do that. Byron Allen's got that other show, Funny You Should Act. Like,
Yeah.
those guys aren't making much at all.
Okay.
I mean, they're just... because they want to be comics or they're hoping maybe they get on the show as a result of it.
Yeah.
But they are working their ass off.
That's the Byron Allen business model.
By the way,
We'll not pay you anything. I'll get all the money.
It's really funny.
There's a Comics Unleashed from 2007 that is still airing. Every time I'm in like Indiana or something, I turn on the TV. It's young me, just drunk and riffing.
And they do they still pay you for those?
Yeah,
They
you
did
get
because somebody sued or
Yes,
something.
yes.
You told me this.
Yes, somebody went after them.
Good.
Like a comic, and
Yeah.
said, "Why are these still airing and we're not getting paid?" So it's funny. I don't even mind sharing the story, but Byron's underling is a guy named Eric.
Sure.
Right? And Eric always posts on his Facebook page, "Byron Allen just bought the Weather Channel. Byron Allen just bought 8 mansions in Malibu." So I would always post underneath
Just bought
it,
Canada.
maybe he can start paying comics now. And every time I would post, he would delete it. So I'd go back and repost. And then I remember I looked down and there's a number. It's from Culver City, which is I
Yeah.
know where their offices
Sure.
are. And it's a very standardized 310-202. I was like, this is somebody.
Yeah.
And I knew it was him. And I just didn't answer. And I was like, oh, this is him being pissed off.
Oh, after you posted,
Yes.
he called your phone?
Now he's calling me to tell me knock it off. And again, I don't mind you making money
Right.
and doing whatever.
Yeah.
Now you're shorting the comics, but don't go so
Fucking
grandiose
A, dude.
about
Absolutely.
it that, hey,
Yeah.
we're literally intentionally screwing you guys.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this many times. How many comics have you worked with that say, because you and I open a lot or whatever.
Sure.
How many comics, I am just taking advantage of the improv. I'm screwing them. F them. I'm making, look at my home. This is, I paid $8 million for this. Look at this. Hey, can you work with me this weekend in Irvine? $75 a show, no hotel. Well, wait a minute. You just said how you're screwing the improv.
Yeah.
Let's fuck over the big conglomerates.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm going to pay you.
Well, that's because you're a corporation, Garrett. You deserve to be screwed.
Man.
So it is. I mean, doing warm up is great, but you gotta get these shows that are already on the air. But the problem is they're already established.
Sure.
I mean, to get Conan was a big deal. I mean, that
absolutely is a big
without a
deal
doubt.
because somebody else was doing that for decades.
Yeah, that Jimmy was doing it for a long time when it started as the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Then it went to TBS, but it's very difficult to get them because most of the people that are doing it when they start, nobody's leaving it. And it's funny because I always laugh. Not that warm up is this brain surgery type of entertainment, but there are some things to it that you have to know logistically and housekeeping. There's sometimes a lot going on. And when people ask me like, hey, I would love to fill in for you or do whatever. And I remember saying to one guy, I said, yeah, but you don't have any experience. And he said to me, he's like, I was the in-stadium announcer for the Dayton Silverback Gorillas in like 2012. I'm like, okay. And then I said, but do you have any video of this? And he's like, no, but here's a newspaper clipping.
Right.
And I was like, well, this should sell it. I mean, the producers are like, we can't use this guy.
Yeah.
I think this newspaper clipping from 73 should really convince you.
People don't even know what newspapers are anymore.
I know. Yeah, it's on microfiche.
There's not even a link.
That's pretty awesome.
You'd have to take a picture of it and
There's
make
nothing.
a fucking...
He's
There's
like,
nothing.
look, I got this microfiche. Just
Yes.
look at this.
Right.
Come to the library with me.
Yeah.
My picture's in there.
And again, not that it's, be all out, but there are certain things that you just have to know before you go into these shows, especially.
It's a skill. And it's kind of like, it's a skill you need to have. It's not a skill that like you want people that you're recommending to figure out on the scene.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I'm not a good fit for colleges. I get it. There are certain gigs that I couldn't do because it requires that certain type of person.
Yeah.
Who can work clean, who can do it. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
But some of these other, I was talking, have you guys ever done Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle in Detroit?
I never have. I've never
Okay.
even been there. Yeah. I've always wanted to go there.
So that's where I'm from Detroit, although I started in San Francisco. But years and years ago, they gave me a headlining weekend after Christmas.
Yeah.
December 26th, 27th, and 28th.
Uh-huh.
Headlining.
Sure.
Yeah.
I barely have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Years later, it's probably the same 15 that you saw me when we worked together for the first time.
We live in boxes.
Yeah, with what was her name? Brett
Butler. That's
Yes.
how me and Gary
That's how we met.
Yeah.
So I remember going in, didn't have the time, but I remember calling the club and I said, hey, do you guys do guest sets? I really am a headliner that loves to cultivate me. I just want people to fill time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They said, we don't want any guest sets. I'm like, oh, I'm screwed, all right? So I was like, okay.
The whole show's you?
Two other comics, right?
Okay.
But he
Right.
still wants like somebody to knock off 5,
Yes.
knock off 10.
So I'm down to
so he can have
40.
more fun.
Yes, I'm down to
Sure.
40, 35. So I get up on stage for the first time. There's these 2 dead poinsettias on stage that I am making fun of constantly, just referring to them. It's helping with the act, right?
Yeah.
So the next day I come in, they're gone. The poinsettias are pulled. They're in the trash.
Come on, man.
I said to one of the managers, like, what happened to the manager was pissed that you were making fun of him.
Oh, man.
I said, can you do me a favor? Do you know where they are? And he's like, yeah, they're in the back. I was like, I really need them back on stage.
Sure.
They bring them back, right? Now dumping. End of the weekend comes. I said to the manager, I was like, hey, that was a great weekend, right? I said, did well numbers-wise. Shakes her head. She's like, no. And I was like, wait, why? She's like, we got a lot of complaints. And I was like, listen, I was out there at the end saying goodbye, and I know we did. And I said, well, it's a comedy club. I'm sure you get a lot of complaints. She's like, not here, we do. I'm like, is Brian Regan here every weekend? Like, I was just like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Squeaky Clean's place?
Yeah.
What the hell?
It was just, it's these managers that they don't want you to leave feeling good.
No.
They want to keep you in the balls.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
before you leave.
you're lucky you got that on the way out. A lot of times they'll tell you like
Monday.
And sometimes you know you're doing well, and they'll still be like, yeah, people are saying you suck this week, just to show you who's boss.
Yeah, I call them family. Yeah, that's
Well, you know this.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times over and over again, and I've heard this from so many other comics, where they will tell you Saturday night or Sunday when they're handing you the check, great weekend. We've never had numbers like this. How much fun.
Right.
Great
Yeah.
to the staff, everything. Monday, the manager gets a note. They hated you.
Right.
They just don't have the balls to tell you.
I had this terrible manager who would ask the club what they thought of me, like on Monday,
Uh-huh.
and they would email him, and then he would forward the
Oh,
email
no.
to me,
Motherfucker.
just to like kind of show me it. You know, it's under the charade that it's for my growth, but it's
Right.
really because he doesn't really work for me. He works for them, in a way, and he's saying, "Listen, they don't like you." One time, somebody's like, they booked me at a club I had played before, in Crackers in Indianapolis,
Right.
and they were like, yeah, you know, the pay is the same because they just really didn't like you last time. You didn't do well last time.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Go back and get the email that he forwarded. And I'm like, says right here from them that I did really well, that they like me. So even if they're writing, we liked him and he was good,
Right.
they still in their head are going, yeah, we don't like him for whatever reason
Sure.
that was, you know?
Wow.
They just want to have that power of doing that.
I think they do. Yeah. They want an excuse to like not give me, like they're going to give me a raise anyway.
I don't know if the club is still there, but years and years ago, I did the Toledo Funny Bone with Ralphie May.
Oh yeah. I've done that recently.
And it's still there. I'm shocked that it's still there. I mean, it's crazy.
This was 2018.
There was, so at the
I was
Toledo
there.
Funny Bone, were you there? Okay.
No.
The Toledo Funny Bone had a music venue in front of the club, and then
Yeah.
you walk through these double doors, and then there was the comedy club.
And now you're in Roadhouse with
Now-
Patrick Swayze.
Yes.
Oh.
And I remember being there.
Wow.
The band was playing outside, and there were 6 people there,
Yeah.
and the music was bleeding into the
Oh,
showroom.
man.
And Ralphie went out there and just said, "Hey guys, I'll give you a couple $100 if you just beat it for the night."
Yeah.
And they left.
Right.
But
That's
I also
awesome.
remember the manager of that club, a guy named John, and I remember everybody had this same issue with this guy. He was just kind of a big shot talker. That
Sure.
He just wanted to be the center of attention. And I remember as I was leaving, he's like, would you come back here on your own? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I want you to come back. And this was, a buddy of mine was with me, and he said, oh my God, like this guy will have you back. He said, I'll never hear from this guy again.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I will prove to you that I said, I'll give him 4 tries. I'll call him 4 times. Nothing.
Yeah.
Because they're windbags.
Sure.
They literally
You're just saying it to say it.
yes.
They also are at the end of the week so happy maybe if they made a profit or whatever. They start looking at the opening acts. They're in a good mood and they start going, you're coming back, dude.
Right.
Give me your veils. You're coming back to headline, blah, 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 because they're in a
Right.
good mood. It's like when you're dating and you're like, yeah, I'm going to call you.
Well, who was right? Who was the
I had a
woman-
good time, but then you're like, I don't really have time.
We always joke, who was the woman? I think it was at Skyline in Appleton where she would always say, send me your veils, right?
Yeah.
You would send the veils. Those weeks are all booked. And it's just like, well, wait, what weeks do you have?
Yeah.
Like they would never respond with,
What
hey,
is-
those are full, however this.
Yeah.
Let's make this so much easier. What weeks do you have available? It would always be, oh, no. These are all full. Take
yeah,
care.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just like, Steve Maison, my buddy, always had this funny line where when bookers wouldn't respond back, he would put in the subject line of an email, I found your wallet. And then, it would get them to open the email and then realize it was a goof.
He'd make a great Nigerian prince. That's some serious email game right
That's a
there.
good one.
Do you remember there was this guy, John Fox? I think everybody remembers John. He was
With the comic or the booker?
the booker who ran the San Francisco comedy competition.
Yeah.
He was a guy, and I'm sure so many bookers did this. He would say he was booking a club in Seattle, and I remember trying to get a week. He said, hey, would love to have you in August, but the summer's always slow, so I can't give you a hotel. And I said, no problem. Let's book something in November. And you would never, and then he just wouldn't respond.
Yeah, of course.
Like they wouldn't
Yeah.
all of a sudden now,
Right.
It was just ridiculous. It was just the way they would do it.
Yeah. So you're at this corporate.
Oh, that's right. Great. So I'm at, and this is kind of getting back to Steve and I doing the podcast, and we had this woman on.
Yeah.
So I did it through Gig Masters, which is just a very bare bones site where people can find you.
Yes.
And they can hire you. They hire
Right.
clowns and like every ventriloquists
And more
just all this stuff.
importantly, they can leave reviews.
They leave reviews.
Oh,
Correct.
Oh, the
Right.
audience? Or
No,
the people
booker,
that hired
the people
you?
that hired you.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this woman booked me. The event was a disaster. They were supposed to have my money at the end. Of course, they didn't. It was a mystery where it was. So I'm leaving. I drive back to L.A. And literally I get a notification at like 2 a.m. This woman posted a review online about the event and just ripped me an asshole.
Yeah,
Like just
yeah.
how bad it was, right?
Wow.
So from that point forward, Steve always would read the review from Gig Masters on our
Yeah,
podcast,
right.
always. And it was a really funny review, and it
that's
was great. So years later, I reached out to this woman. She had an AOL account. I was like, there's no way this email's still in existence.
Yeah.
I said, hey, this is Gary. I did the show. I said, no hard feelings. I said, I would love it if you came on our podcast and read the review that you left for me that night. And she reached out to me. She said I would be happy to do it.
Oh, my God.
And Steve didn't know. And I said, so we started off the podcast, and I said, Steve, I booked the guest for today. Do you remember how many times you've read that bad review
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
me
yeah,
on Gig
yeah.
Masters? Like, yeah. And I
Yeah.
said, today I want to have the person who wrote the review on our podcast. And I said, Liz, are you there? And she's like, I'm here. And she read the review and was so goddamn funny with adding, he was horrible. Like, he was bad. And I didn't want her to think coming into that podcast I was going to dump on her.
Sure.
Or, hey, your event was lousy or whatever. But she was so good at just reading the review.
Right.
And again, we thought it was funny. Does the audience think it's fun? But like, that was kind of what we wanted,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
podcast where we could do what we wanted
Well,
to do.
you know, it's funny. She's good at that because that's her whole life.
Yes.
I'm sure she just leaves bad reviews and complains about shit.
Oh, right.
So she was like, yeah, let me just dust off an old classic.
I was shocked. I was shocked they paid me. I really
Right.
was
Yeah.
Oh, you did
shocked.
get paid
They
eventually.
paid me.
All right.
It was like $1,000, and again, that was great money.
Yeah.
And it was ideal.
Yeah.
Right.
But the way she read back, Aaron, you were here, obviously. You must have remembered that, how funny
Yeah.
and how
There's something about
charismatic she was.
You were supposed to be wearing a suit and you weren't.
She said she gave me money to rent a tuxedo. I wasn't wearing a tuxedo. Where did that money go? The $300 rental we gave her from Men's Warehouse. Like, it was really just his jokes were stale. The crowd didn't like him. And she gave this scathing review where you thought, you're done. You
Yeah.
thought this is
You're
the
done
end
on
of the
Gig
road.
Salad or whatever.
Gig Masters.
Gig Master,
I got
my
to take
bad.
it over. And I'll never forget, I had a gig years later on Gig Masters, and I said, I will do this for you virtually for free, but you gotta, good, bad, or indifferent, give me a good review.
Yeah.
Because the 2-star, if you give me 5,
Oh, yeah.
we gotta even out to at least 3.5.
Right.
Totally.
And they did, and I think that was like the last one I did.
Yeah, well, for those that don't know, doing a corporate event is very
Sounds
difficult.
awful.
Now, you hear the difference between the way he's talking. Like, you show up at warm up, that's a difficult job. When you're talking about that, sounds like you know what you're doing, you know exactly what to do, and you know how to be successful at it.
Right.
Corporates, comics, it's probably the toughest gig going. I think it goes. The worst is corporates. Second worst is cruises. Third worst is college.
Yeah.
You can switch college and cruises around depending who you are.
Yeah.
And then after that, you just want to be in a comedy club so fucking bad.
Yeah.
But corporates, you're showing up someplace where everybody knows each other. The lights are on.
Right.
The sound system sucks.
Right.
All you're doing is keeping them from talking to each other.
Yeah.
You're interrupting their conversation, and it's I don't know. I've done like one corporate I can think of. Actually, I did a dentist office.
How did they
I'm
find
going to say
you?
that again because what's the point? I found a dentist office. I don't know how they found me in hindsight, but I just started. I did my stand up and like no one listened to me at all. Everyone just kept talking.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
Two things. Where's it at, and how much time are you supposed to
It's
do?
in the valley, and I only did 15 minutes.
Okay.
But it was a tough 15,
Yeah.
you know? And I also did this farmer's
Oh, boy.
Christmas party. I flew to Kansas City, and it's either in Missouri or Kansas,
Right.
2 hours away from the airport. And there were moments where like it was working, but I just felt like I just flew to Kansas City, drove 2 hours to like ruin their Christmas party. You know what I mean? You know that feeling where you're like there was a midpoint where I'm like, all right, I got him.
Yeah.
I got him. And then I just couldn't keep him. And then it just kind of ended kind of awkward.
Right.
And like, yeah, I can be clean, which means I can refrain from cursing.
Right.
But I just don't have enough G-rated material for these,
I don't either.
for these farmers.
Yep.
That it's not only was it, you know, they were rural farmers, but it was also corporate. And I just felt so dirty, man. But the, you know who booked me was the Funny Bone.
Oh.
And so they had hundreds of comedians to pick from.
Yeah.
And so, and the organization wanted me too. So I shouldn't have felt too bad because I did what I did. But I like to feel guilty. I grew up Catholic. You know?
I think the problem with those corporate gigs is
Yeah.
they're there for their company Christmas party, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're having a great time. The problem is, maybe you guys have had this, where they don't want to announce that there's a comic.
Yeah.
They want it to be a surprise.
Right.
Like, you go up and just start doing your stuff, and it's like, this is not going to work. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot. I remember some guy, after a show at the Irvine Improv, hired me, and he said, I want you to come to my house, Mission Viejo, beautiful house, for my company Christmas party. It's going to be at the house. And I want you to just go into little pockets of people and just start making fun of them. Just start going in.
Like
and
magicians come up and start doing card tricks.
I'm sorry, sir. You don't know any assholes?
That's so weird.
And he said, you can say that you're the new, whatever the title was, like chief, whatever. Just introduce yourself and just start making fun of people. So I remember going in and doing this. I quickly realized it's going downhill.
Sure.
Like, it's going downhill. Then I was supposed to be there for an hour. Then I quickly realized he's not really watching me. He's in the kitchen mingling around. He's doing his own thing. So I realized I can just start going into groups talking and not being a dick.
Right.
Because I don't think on Monday it's going to be like, hey, did you guys remember? So I literally burned an hour just talking and got the hell out.
Yeah.
Because it was a sinking ship. I mean, because to me, if you're going to do a corporate gig, it's probably going to go bad. But if it's set up at least somewhat the right way,
the
they
mic
introduce
and-
you,
yeah,
this guy
yeah.
came out, he's doing that, blah, blah, blah. Then it could be, you at least have a 20% better chance of it going certainly
Well,
different.
It just goes to show you people who don't usually put on shows have no idea how to put on a show.
No.
For sure.
And then you're being led by someone that knows way less than you.
They think they know what's funny.
They're like, my friends will dig this.
Yeah.
It's always when you do that. It's like, I remember the same thing happened to me. I did the Irvine Improv, and this guy that was a waiter there was like, yeah, you got to play my frat party. And, you know, nothing exceptionally bad about it, but it was just like, this is not what they want.
Right.
There's no mic. What the fuck am I doing? You've done USO tours. Now, where is that on? That's got to be good, right? That's got to be great.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great if you're doing it with the right people.
Sure.
Because you're spending a lot of, I mean, listen, I did it with Steve Byrne and Steve Simone. So it's
Yeah.
like
Oh, that's
two
cool.
of the best.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it is a blast.
Yeah.
Because they take great care of you. And we're just having such a good time. We did a show, I can't remember where it was, Japan. And Steve and I were up on stage, and Steve says, we want to buy all of the soldiers a free round of drinks here in the show. There was a bar in the back. They all stand up and all rush to the back of the bar. And it went from like, we love you, you guys are heroes, to, where are you going, you piece of shit? Like, Steve and I still talk about that because there was a mass exodus to go get the free drinks.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
great. But yeah, those are a blast. I mean, you've done them, right?
I've done some things here in the States,
Okay.
and they've gone from feeling like a bar gig
Yeah.
to more like I remember one time I was doing pretty well. All I remember about the gig is just one guy had it out for me and just didn't like what I was doing because they're disciplined soldiers, and I'm
Right.
there talking about smoking weed and shit, you know. So I remember it was generally good though because they want you to be there.
Yeah.
You know, they want you to be there.
It's crazy because I did one in Iraq with Scott Kennedy when he
Yeah.
was still alive, and then
Yeah.
the one I did with Steve was South Korea and Japan. I mean, you realize you're like, I am literally thousands and thousands of miles away performing for
sure.
the troops. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you're Bob Hope.
Yes,
you're fucking
it's a
history. You're
great-
part of history.
But getting back to cruise ships.
Oh yeah.
You didn't you do just one?
I've never done a cruise
No?
ship. I've had like 3 cruise ship agents. I'm looking for a new one because every time I run into it, because I just worked at the Borgata, which is a casino.
Yeah.
That's somewhere on the list too.
Absolutely.
I think that's between colleges and club.
A
right?
casino?
So like it's better
Yes.
than a college, but because you're not doing that much time and you've got a fighting chance,
Yes.
but it's still no picnic. But anyway, I did the Borgata and there was a cruise ship comic on the lineup and he's like, dude, you'd be perfect for it.
Yeah.
Here's my agent. And so now I'm calling them. And like my self-esteem is high because a cruise ship comic told me, you could do this. You got the right stuff.
Would you want to do it?
I would do it for the money right now. I'm willing to do anything. My road career is so sporadic right now.
Right.
I'm down to leave the fucking house. What do you think I'm doing here right now? You know what I mean? And it's I've seen so many comics do it who are my age, and I saw them when I was younger, and they get on stage and they go, I'm just happy to be out of the house. And you're
Right. Right.
and because it gets a big laugh and you go, fuck this guy. But that's exactly where I'm at in my career. I just want to go out, do my thing, get handed a check for I don't care what,
Right.
and go home.
I will say I did it a little bit before the pandemic.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
I like the shows. By the way, I'm all about the social part of it.
Okay.
A lot of comics do the show right back to their room. You don't see them until the next day.
Yeah.
I was all about hanging out with the passengers, getting drinks with them. I loved it. And you it's weird because the first day of the cruise, nobody knows you.
Yeah.
As the cruise goes on, people start to gradually know you, and then you become the rock star of the ship.
Yeah.
They really do love you.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like about it were the rules attached to being on the ship.
Yeah.
Whether that was you couldn't do this, you had to be in your room by a certain time, you couldn't go offshore because there was this mandatory, silly, stupid meeting that really had no interest or bearing for you. There's certain things. The shows, I really did dig them, but a lot of the other things I just didn't enjoy.
You couldn't get hammered, right? Like that's got to be in your contract.
It's in
right?
the contract,
Yeah.
but you could pull but you had to be in your room by 2, which I
Okay.
know sounds
2 a.m.?
Yeah, I know that
Oh,
sounds late
okay.
anyway, but like you did feel like you were. Here's the other thing I didn't like. You had a card that was your room key that gave you access to things, right? So if you're a regular passenger, let's say your card is orange. We had a yellow card. So when you would go up to the bar, the minute you pulled out your card, even if the bar was empty, they'd be like, you can't be here. Like you're
you're not allowed at this bar.
not allowed at this bar because you're a guest entertainer.
Right.
Oh my god.
There were great restaurants you could technically eat at, right?
Yeah.
You'd get there, be nobody there. Hey, I'm here to dine, just one. Okay, sure. Can I see your card? Nah. Like, so that made you feel like shit. That
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
why can't I?
Yeah.
It's open. I don't
Yeah.
understand. It's not like it's busy or whatever.
Right.
But they just wouldn't. I think because a lot of the crew that worked on those ships, they didn't want to be there. They're sharing a room with 3 other crew members. They know you have your own room.
Yeah.
It was always funny to me too to see like the stewards or the people in the dining room or wherever, right? These girls. Once in a while, they would have an all-crew party,
Yeah.
right? To just kind of build momentum for the crew, right?
Right.
And you'd see these girls, and you're like, "What the? That was you earlier?"
Right.
Like you're like, now you're wearing these tight pants, your hair is down, you have makeup on. So
Yeah.
I always found that weird with the
Right.
staff at like the Improv, like
Yeah.
the servers,
Sure.
who left work after the first show. They'd get dolled up in the back. You're like, hey, have a good night. They're like, wait, who is this?
Yeah.
Like that was Carrie, like
It's
from
like
earlier?
Yeah, it's like seeing your teacher at the grocery store.
Exactly. You're like,
You're a person.
this doesn't look like the same person. So that was the only thing I really didn't like was that, the shows themselves were decent and you could have fun and go off the rails, but the way that they kind of treated you as a performer. Now, other ships are different. Royal Caribbean takes good care of the comics, other people, but listen, I heard so many horror stories about like working at Carnival, like you're in a room that is just dog shit. And listen, some comics don't care about that.
Sure.
Some don't. Some
Yeah.
don't care about, you being allowed to eat at certain places. For me, I'm old enough that I care about it.
You're old enough, and also the reason you're a comedian in the first place is because at some point in your life you're like, I don't like a lot of rules
Yes.
in my life. I
Yes.
like to like do things my way. And when we work at clubs, they really understand that.
Yeah.
They're like, they know they can't tell you what to do. It's a pass-fail grade.
Yeah.
It's like you just won't come back if you curse too much.
Right.
Or you didn't get enough laughs or whatever. They're never, and we've seen them, like, especially people who are selling tickets, they just cater immensely to those people.
Yes.
You know, it's insanity.
I saw it all the time with Ralphie. I mean,
Yeah.
Ralphie could just talk about whatever he wanted to, and whether it was funny or not funny.
Yeah.
I worked with him New Year's Eve at a club in Phoenix, Stand Up Live.
Sure.
And he went on stage for 30 minutes talking about how his toe hurt. And the next day, people were sending emails and like, bad. But the next day, the owners of the club were coming in with Christmas gifts for him and his family.
Yeah.
Like, they don't, if the numbers are there, they don't. It
makes sense, though.
Of course.
You know?
You could go in with the most creative act and people are loving it and you're clean and everybody's just having a great time. But if there's 30 people in that audience, never be back again.
You'll be their special hire for the year.
Yes.
You'll be like the comedian they believe in.
Yes.
Right? Like I heard somebody saying like that's who Bill Hicks was. Like
That's fair.
he was like they would say like clubs would hire him. He was never a draw. Audiences kind of didn't like him, but the club felt good about themselves if they hired somebody cutting edge, artistic,
he's
whatever you
artist,
want to call
yeah.
it.
Kind of like maybe a Doug Stanhope, kind of to that degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think somebody that, well, it's funny because even with, I remember one time, the only time that I flew overseas for a gig on Norwegian was to Barcelona. And I was like, this is pretty awesome. They're going to fly me to Barcelona.
Sure.
And it's a 12-hour flight. And I get there, the cabin is just shit. And the problem is, the minute you say something, you're the problem.
Sure.
We have 1,000 other guys that would take this cabin in
That's
2
the
seconds.
thing. There's thousands of other guys who just don't give a shit.
So they don't want to listen to it. Go
Yeah.
out there, do your gig.
It's why we'll never have a union.
Right.
It's because there's always thousands
Thousands
of people who will go take that paycheck.
Well, and again, it's the same thing with comedy condos. Just sleep in the bed that you know so many other comics have jerked off in or
Yeah.
had sex or whatever. It's like nobody wants to hear it.
There's
Like,
crumbs on the floor, even if they say it's clean, and every single owner goes, "You're gonna love this condo. It's not like a comedy condo." It's always a fucking comedy condo. I did this place in Milwaukee. It was affiliated with the Skyline thing,
okay.
and there was fucking rats in the walls, like 30 of them, just like there was enough that it would like made all this fucking noise, and you're just like, Jesus Christ! I thought this was a real gig.
Yeah,
You know?
well,
Yeah,
you know the condo blows when they say the key is under the flower pot out front.
Right.
You're just like, well, who has access to this thing?
Yeah.
Anybody who's ever gone there,
Because there's like 500 people that
Yeah.
know that key's there.
yeah, they go there and they stay there on Monday and Tuesday.
Yes.
And then also when they have a fucking combo, you know they ain't changing the combo.
You're just like, how many? And would you want to live in an apartment complex where you're raising kids and right next to you, like, oh, who lives next to you? Oh, the Funny Bone owns that thing. You're just like, wait, what does that mean? You'll see this weekend. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a different
It's always new weirdos.
It's a different 40-year-old male every week.
Yeah, just,
Oh, good.
just
Perfect.
Great.
There wasn't. I don't
Sounds
know if there
great.
was any.
Because women demand hotels, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
Yes.
Oh,
Women ask for what they want.
because they're not going to be in a comedy.
They're not going to a condo with the guys.
Yeah, that's fair.
Can you think of a good, like, what was a good comedy condo that you liked? What was? I'm trying to think if
I thought the Miami Improv one was fine.
Yeah.
You know, because it really was your own space, and they had like a real maid to clean it or whatever.
that was the one that was in the apartment that had the balcony overlooking the bay.
Yeah, it was nice.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was really nice. It was
yeah, there was
nice.
a bidet.
Yes. Yes, that was a nice one. Had a
Classy.
washer dryer in
Yeah.
it. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I remember there was always I always knew when I wasn't working with a headliner selling tickets at the Fort Lauderdale Improv because that was at the Hard Rock where they had rooms right at
Yeah.
the Hard Rock.
Oh,
Yeah.
in the place.
In the hotel. It was the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, which
Right.
is where the Improv was. And you would work with somebody who was selling tickets, and you'd stay right there on
Oh,
property.
it was sweet.
And then there were times where you were working with somebody that wasn't selling. You're like, you're at the Hampton Inn 4 miles away. You're like, don't you have rooms here? Like, what?
I met this kid Matt Bellick out there. Same situation, right? Like I'm 4 miles away at some other like hotel, and every time he came to pick me up, his car broke down to the point where he picked me up 3 times, and every time it was a different car, and every time it broke down for a different reason. It was so funny. Like we could barely make it the 4 miles every
Really?
night. Yeah, it was so crazy. I still know this kid. I love this kid.
Mitch Fatel and I were doing a gig, and the guy picked us up, and I was with Mitch. He was doing radio, and we're driving, and you hear this guy, and he's hitting the brakes, and the brakes are just crunching. You're just like, this guy is putting he obviously needed to do brake. You're like, why are you picking us up in this car?
They don't, because they got selected that day. They picked the shortest straw. For those that don't know, like they make the staff pick you up. In other words, like a bartender or a waiter or a waitress.
Right.
And they're so like passive aggressive about or unprepared for it that like they'll pick you up from the airport. You'll open the car door and the passenger seat will just be filled with trash.
Yeah.
And they'll look at the trash like, is he going to move it or am I going to move it?
Right.
And you look at them like,
man.
you're going to move it, right? And then they just, sorry about the car. I didn't know I was picking you up. And it's like, you should apologize to yourself if you're living like this.
You ever heard Patrick Keane talking about him picking up Buzz Aldrin?
Buzz Aldrin?
The second man on the moon.
Holy shit.
So
the first person in Pat's car.
He like worked for some talk show, and they're like, hey, Pat, we need you to go pick up Buzz.
Yeah.
And he's like, Aldrin? And they're like, yeah, in my truck? And they're like, yeah. And he goes, so I'm up there in this shitty truck, and like he's kind of dirty, like a comic would have.
Yeah.
You know, you're living this life
Yeah.
of work and comedy.
Yeah.
And he said Buzz could care less. He goes, as he picks him up, they're walking through. He's like in an old folks home.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, Colonel, morning, Colonel, or whatever his rank was.
Sure.
And then they just get in his truck, and he said Buzz just couldn't even give a shit. And he was like, the moon module is a lot smaller than this.
Yeah, and you can breathe this air.
Yeah.
So fuck it.
I was just like,
It smells like French fries,
I was
but
like, that's amazing, dude, that you're like stuck in traffic with Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
That's insane. Like, what do you even say to a guy like that?
well, you let him get out of the car first because he deserves
that's
it.
fair.
There was. Do you remember the Lake Tahoe Improv?
I don't.
You
I never did the Lake
never-
Tahoe.
oh,
No.
It was one of the best. I mean, it was such a fun. The shows were okay, but just being up in Tahoe and it paid decent.
Oh, hell yeah.
It was
yeah.
great. So I remember they would do shows Wednesday through Sunday, and then off Monday, Tuesday. So I remember the girl that booked it asked me to do 2 weeks in a row. She said, "Hey, is there any way we had a fallout?" And they gave you a per diem, which was great for food.
Nice,
and
yeah.
I said, "Hey, do I get the per diem for Monday, Tuesday for the days that we don't have shows?" Which I hope we did. And she said, "Oh, not only is there no per diem, you don't get a hotel." I was like, "No hotel. I'm working in a." So you mean to tell me there's not one single room? I got to check out on Monday.
Yeah, in this whole hotel.
And check back in on Wednesday. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys are saving because there's no trap, whatever.
Yeah.
And she said, "There's no." I was like,
Monday and Tuesday, dude. There's nobody there.
slow days. So I was just like, no, there's no reason for me to pull my stuff out, go to a motel,
Yeah.
and check back in.
Where you'll get bed bugs, by the way,
Of
and bring it back
course.
to the
Yeah.
hotel.
And I remember there was a guy, he was the house MC, and he had a radio show up there. And as part of you doing that week, you had to do his radio show because he was the house
Sure.
MC.
Oh, sure.
And I remember when he got fired from his duties as house MC, he still had the radio show. And he'd reach out to you when you were up there, and he'd be like, "Hey, you want to come in?" And be like, "Fuck no, I was only
Now that I
doing
don't
this."
have to,
Yeah, why would
right.
I come in
Yeah,
and
yeah.
plug? No, I'm waking up at 9 a.m. on a Thursday. No, you lost the gig, so
Yeah.
we're done here. The
Right,
relationship
right.
is absolutely over.
Oh my God. We got to go to Eric Wendell right now. And Gary's got to leave soon. Shit.
Eric Wendell.
Yeah. Do you know Eric Wendell?
No.
He's our movie reviewer.
That's great.
Oh.
Do you
His
know
credentials are he used to be a grip. And
It's almost 2:00.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Okay,
Yeah, man.
unbelievable. Oh, is it? How do we pull up Eric Wendell?
Well, he's going to be on the Zoom.
Eric? Yeah,
Oh,
he's
can I watch?
remote
I'll
from
watch.
Torrance.
What's he reviewing today?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
Oh, okay.
That's the beauty of it.
Okay.
But I did receive word
Yeah.
that this is his last appearance with the beard. You'll see. He's been growing out a
Okay.
beard.
Oh.
That's so you say so what beard? Everybody has a
Yeah.
beard. This thing looks so artificial and snapped on that we can't help but
it looks
comment
pretty
on
groomed.
it every single time.
Is he a comic?
No.
No,
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 okay.
never once has he done comedy.
works at the
ever.
airport.
Yeah.
How do you know this guy?
Well, he went to high school with my friend Randy,
Okay.
who I moved out here with.
Okay.
And then he ended up being a roommate. And then we started a podcast a long time ago called The Crab Feast
Okay.
in 2011, and we didn't know what the fuck to do. So like, let's get Wendell over the phone. He'll review a movie, and it's just become tradition. It's
Okay.
kind of like our one-ended bookend of the show. It's like we know what to go out on.
But wait a minute. It's weird because there's not a lot of brand new movies out. So is he kind of like
That's the joy of
thing.
it.
He-
He also, it's not a priority, which is another fun thing.
Right.
Okay.
So he'll be like, yeah, I'll review 3 episodes of a
TV
10-episode
show.
TV
Yeah.
show because I don't have anything else figured out.
Okay.
And it's just the whole podcast is bullshit. It's an exception today since you have actual stories.
I'd like to. Oh, there it is. There's the beard. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, looking good, Wendell. Holy shit, we've never had him this close up. Oh yeah, we have. I just never turned around. Down my neck.
Yeah, I'd
So-
like to hear the review.
So what are your plans for the beard, Wendell?
It's too much. It's too much work. I gotta shave this. It's a pain in the ass.
Too much work.
The whole point of doing it in the first place was to be lazy and not have to shave, and now it's so out of control that, I mean, I'm getting hair in my mouth trying to eat fucking dinner. I'm brushing my teeth and getting toothpaste all over, and I have to clean that up. You know, I mean, it's just a plethora of nightmares.
I get it.
So this is it. This is the end of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and I'm off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so I'm gonna try and shave it on one of those days.
I
so I don't
want
have
you
deal with it
to
anymore.
shave it to the skin. I want you to shave your head. I want you to take off all your clothes and put on a diaper and take a picture of
No.
it. Will you do that for me? For the show? Will you do that for the show?
For the show.
It's all about the show.
With a rattle too.
Yeah.
I'll send you a rattle.
No, I usually just do like a small. I don't go all the way to the skin because that'll hurt my skin. But I'll do like the 5 o'clock shadow type thing or whatever.
All right.
Why don't you leave mutton chops?
Yeah, why don't you get creative on the
Get an
web?
old timey, old timey like bartender mutton chop situation.
Yeah, like a James Hetfield, Cowardly Lion type thing.
There we go.
I'll think about doing something like that.
Please.
But
Torrance's
all this
finest.
stuff around the mouth got to go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Well, Gary is dying to hear a review.
Yeah.
So if we could just tear into that, we'd be happy.
I watched a new movie called Armor with Sylvester Stallone and Jason Patrick.
Oh,
Okay.
That was probably pretty high active acting, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to decide who gets all the Oscars. There's going to be a lot thrown around, but yeah, it says it's in theaters on Prime or on IMDb. But I paid, I don't know what it was to watch it on Prime. So I'm thinking, oh well, I didn't see it. I'm not going to go to theater to see this. It's too big of a risk. It's cheaper to watch it on Prime. Anyways,
That's also included in the review is how he watched the movie.
Do you guys pay for that? Like, is it part of the budget?
No,
to send
you
him
could
to
really,
movies?
you really should start sending me the bill,
Okay.
Wendell.
That is his choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For.
I'll give you one of those itemized receipts.
Yeah, send me
and
an
stuff
invoice.
like
Yeah.
Erwin gave you
hmm
for $44,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, I include where I watch it so that the listeners know, if they want to watch the movie, I'll watch it. They
Listeners.
know right where to go see that.
Welcome.
Yeah. Anyway,
Both of them.
To
Listener.
millions of people around the world need to know.
Yeah.
They want to just get right to the movie.
It's funny.
after
We
they
have
watch
some.
this
We have
part.
like one listener in each country.
and
Like I look
hey,
at the breakdown. It's like you can't tell one friend. We can't double this. You're the
Yeah.
only person in Argentina listening to
I
this.
mean, I think that's
What's happening?
pretty fantastic, right?
Yeah,
If we could get 2 in Belgium, maybe they could do lunch
we got
together.
it. We got 2 in Belgium.
2 in
We
Belgium.
need 4.
Exactly.
These are the type of people that don't leave their houses. That's
Right.
the problem.
That's
If
fair.
they're down to our podcast.
Right. That's fair. That's fair.
All right. So what's the name of this movie?
Normally, a movie like this is right up my alley. It's a heist movie, armor car heist. Stallone is the heister, and Jason Patrick and his on-screen son work for this armor car company and are the target of Stallone's strike team. And normally, I'm like, well, this is my kind of movie. I love heist movies, con artist movies, stuff like that. This movie was awful. Just
What?
horrific.
No
The
way.
whole movie takes place on a bridge in Louisiana,
Okay.
pretty much.
That was my whole
that's great
2020.
for production. One location, you're golden. You don't have to pay anybody for anything else, right?
Right.
But that sucks. There was no plot. The writing was just awful writing.
I'm shocked.
The majority of the movie was Stallone getting all of his weapons and armor ready to go in some warehouse before they go actually do the heist.
All right.
That was the majority of the action. Other than that, it's just these guys sitting in an armored truck,
Not letting him
arguing
in.
back and forth on when they're going to get shot at or when he's going to try and remove them from the armored truck.
So hold on, there's an armored truck, and it's the citizens of Louisiana trying to get rich off of it, or what? Is it a Brinks truck?
It's some random rusty old armored truck from some unknown armored car company.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just Stallone and a few assholes that he runs with trying to rob it.
They tried. Oh, so they wanted to rob it on the bridge. Is that the deal? They're like, we're gonna rob it on the bridge.
It's not clear to me how. I guess they planned on forcing them onto this bridge somehow. It seems kind of random in the movie how they ended up here.
Mhm.
I guess it could have been planned that way.
I could
it seemed
tell
like
you
a
how.
coincidence to me.
They're like, so look, we only got one location. Let's make it look good. And they're like, this bridge looks fucking pretty hot. Let's do it on the bridge. At least we get
It's
the
a really
river.
old metal bridge. Like it's
Uh-huh.
one of the ones that has. I think the middle goes up so that boats can go through it and shit. You know what I mean?
And is it one of these you're like wondering, where are the police? Like, this has been 40-minute standoff.
Nobody's around.
No police yet. They're like, we're on the
Right.
way.
That's no, you're right. That's exactly what. There's no cops anywhere. They're all they're all over in the bayou,
Right.
fucking
Right.
eating donuts and drinking coffee or whatever the
Right.
fuck. I don't know.
Not to,
It's
dis-
beignets.
Yeah,
not to disparage the police.
no,
and
I wouldn't want
donuts.
to do that.
So Wendell, what are you giving this movie?
2?
It is really bad.
2 ice cream trucks.
If you're extremely bored, or maybe if you smoked a pound of weed like my neighbors out there, it's funny. You know, I'm sitting here getting ready and stuff, and I hear the kids next door pounding on their neighbor kid's door to go play or whatever. And they're all outside, and they're like, "Oh fuck! It just smells like weed. It's all good smell out here. It sucks. It smells like fucking weed everywhere."
The kids are complaining about that.
Yeah, even the kids are complaining about
That's
it.
pretty funny.
That's how terrible this place is.
That's pretty funny.
Anyways, yeah, maybe if you smoke like my neighbors and go and watch this movie or drink a 12-pack, maybe you'll be entertained somehow because you'll be making fun of it like Mystery Science Theater 3000 or something. But that's about the gist. That's about all you're going to get out of it. It was terrible. You know, at one point, at one point, Stallone's character just gives up. He's like, well, fucking like starts walking down the middle of the road. Okay, yeah, what? You're just gonna walk down the middle of the road? Like the cops are eventually gonna show up. Maybe go running through the trees, run down some side street or something. He's walking down the middle of the main street, and it's
So
like
this is
it's like
basically-
he flips a cigarette, and all of a sudden the cops start showing up behind him. It's so fucking preposterous.
Nice.
So this is Rambo 6, essentially.
Nice.
Yeah.
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 The-
Rambo
a
6,
new
yeah.
beginning.
I'm just waiting for Colonel Troutman to come out of the woods and call him home.
It's over.
It's
Wendell.
over, Rambo.
All right, thanks, Wendell. We'll let you get to work, man. Thanks for stopping by. And let me just get one last look at this beard.
Before it's gone.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for
Yeah.
change.
All right, you guys.
All right,
Peace
later,
out, man.
Wendell. You're the man.
Peace out.
Late.
By the way, something really funny. You're talking about numbers and just trying to track things. Do you remember during COVID when Jamie, I don't know if you'll remember this, maybe you were back east, but Jamie at the Laugh Factory would do these shows at the club without an audience, and you could stream it online.
Okay.
Remember
yeah.
this?
Not really. I wasn't
Okay,
here.
so it was like from 2 to 4 every day.
Okay.
Right? So he would do it. And I remember the night before they called and asked me to do it. Everybody did it, right? So the night before he calls me and he says, "Hey, listen," never talked to the guy before, and he
Sure.
said, "Hey, listen, we do these things. I just want you to know how important it is to be on your A game." He said, "We have millions of people from around the world watching this. They're in a bad place. They're watching it because you're going to be uplifting to them.
Yeah.
So please just do your A stuff. Don't make fun of it, all this other stuff. So I was like, of course. So I get to the club. They have a monitor in the back, and in the corner it shows the viewers, how many people.
And you can see that?
You can see it. I literally looked. I'm not exaggerating. 17 people. I was like, where did the millions? I mean, even if there were like 100,000, whatever, but it was 17.
Yeah. That's
and what they did was
awesome,
they used to leave the comments on. Like you could
Oh,
comment
God.
on it, and everybody was like, this guy sucks. And they shut it. They had to shut the comments because people were getting.
Because like all 17 people were keyboard
pissed.
warriors.
Oh my God.
Screw
my
you.
God.
This is brutal. I was just at the Laugh Factory a couple weeks ago, and there was a comic who I'd never met before. She just moved here. I'd heard she wasn't. Anyway, she says to the manager, "Are there any fallouts tonight?" I'm like, even if there was a fallout, they would just end the show. Like
Right.
you're not.
Yeah.
They are. I remember I was at the Improv one time hosting, and you know how painful it is when you're hosting and there's nobody there.
Oh God.
And they are looking, and then whoever's on stage doesn't want to stretch. I remember Rita was there, and I said, "Hey, so and so's at the bar." I can't remember who the name was, and she's like, "I'll keep looking." And it was an obvious cut.
We'd rather have you stretch and struggle
than put up. Anyway, listen, I'm kidding. But it was such a funny, obvious. I'll keep looking. I was like, Rita, there's nobody here. Like, there's nobody.
Oh my God.
Unreal.
Well, thanks for giving me some editing to do. Thanks for coming by, man. This is
Great.
full
Good to
of
see you,
laughs.
I
man.
love it.
Good
Yes.
to see you.
Where can people find
Just
you?
my website, GaryCannon.com.
Love it.
Awesome.
That's
Love
it.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for listening to thefullcharge.com or the Full Charge Power Hour. Hit us up, patreon.com/the Full Charge. And we'll see you next week.
Peace.